Hello, everyone. I am Kate, Executive Director of Advancing Women in Tech, and I am so thrilled to be here with you today. We are joined by Raji Rajagopalan, who is an incredible woman leader in tech. So let me tell you a little bit about her before we get to hear more of her story and how she and her insights can help your career. Raji believes that your differentness is your differentiator. She is the author of the book, Daring to Be Different, Stories and Tips from a Woman Leader in Tech, which is a book I just completed this weekend. And I have to say, this collection will help you build the most important skills in your arsenal to have the career of your choosing. In her day job, Raji is a partner director of software engineering at Microsoft. In her last 20 years in the tech industry, her work has spanned multiple areas, including building startup teams, turning around unsuccessful projects, driving engineering rigor. She has scaled online services, grown global teams, and has innovated on products used by billions and billions of customers. She currently runs an organization across 5 countries and 4 continents. So I encourage you to learn more about her today by listening to this conversation and also by checking out her website, rajiraj.com. So with that, thank you so much, Raji, for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, Kate. And thank you for your warm words of introduction. Really moves my heart. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I am so thrilled that you are here today. And I have to say, it was so encouraging reading your book. And I learned, for instance, that you, like me, are somebody who uses a daily mantra. If I may ask, what is your mantra of today?
Well, today it's going to be, I am enough. I talk about this in my book as well. This is a mantra that I have used quite a bit, especially when I feel like I'm in the middle of something that causes me to have imposter syndrome.
Mm.
And, when I'm in a boardroom or in a corporate room where it seems like I'm reaching for something just beyond my reach. And it is important for me to really be successful in what I'm doing. And now with everything going on in the industry with AI just around the corner, lots of exciting things happening. It's very uncomfortable sometimes, right? When you're imagining something completely new, and it is at times like these when you really have to have a mantra that centers you, that makes you feel confident. And for me, when there's so much around me that I don't know, and I have to really figure out and learn, and AI is one of those areas I'm still trying to become better at and become an expert in. And it puts me in that zone of discomfort. And it is when I have to tell myself I'm enough, and I'm strong enough, smart enough, articulate enough, and clever enough. I'm going to be able to figure this out, right? So that's my mantra for the day.
I love that. And I realize that I have already read your book. So I have a good sense of how I see the connections between your words of the day and the why in the takeaways that I have gotten from your book. But for everybody in our audience who has not yet had the chance to read it, can you go ahead and share the why you decided to write Daring to Be Different? And who did you write
Yeah.
this book for?
Yeah, I love that question. Let me tell you a bit of the process, what got me here, what got me to writing the book, and we will be able to tease out the why from that answer. So I started mentoring people a few years ago. I've been in this industry for 20 years now, in the tech industry for 20 years. And since I started becoming more and more senior in the company and in the industry, I started mentoring people, right? Like that's one of the things that I really love doing is to, on the one hand, learn from people that I mentor. On the other hand, it's a way for me to give back to the community that's really helped me spread my wings as well, this technology community. And so, I started mentoring, and a lot of times when I have been mentoring people, some of the topics became very, very common. Some questions were very frequently asked, and I started seeing the pattern, right? Like people were struggling with the same kinds of problems, the same kind of challenges, and I started talking to them, and these conversations were super rich. They educated me as much as I believe they educated the people that I was mentoring. And as these common questions, I started answering them in one-on-one conversations. I also started writing them down because that was a way for me to scale the advice that I was giving to a larger community. So I have my blog at rajiraj.com, and I started regularly writing the advice that I was giving to the people that I mentor. And I realized that the answers, the experiences, the perspectives I was sharing were resonating with the people that were reading my blog. And people came back to me and said, Raji, this is really helpful. This blog post that you wrote just a week ago, it really helped me overcome some of the fears that I had. For example, one of the blog posts that I wrote was, and I talk about this in my book as well, my own fear of public speaking when I had to speak in front of 10,000, 20,000 people. And I really, my first language is not English. I learned when I was growing up, I learned how to read and write English, but not really speak in English. So that was not something that I was super comfortable with, and I had to learn to get over my fear of public speaking. I had to learn how to do it well, and I had written about these are the tips that helped me, and this is how I overcame my fear of public speaking. And this person stopped me outside the elevator at Microsoft, and she told me that I'm just going into a meeting room where I'm going to give an important presentation for my organization, and your blog post, I just happened upon it last week, and it really helped me. And that inspired me to write more, because this is what, as a writer, I intend to achieve: is be useful, be helpful to other people. And you probably picked it up from my book as well. That's exactly what I want to do with the book. And so I thought, well, I need to continue writing. And more I wrote, the more and more I got feedback that I should write more. And in fact, it was one of my readers, a few of my readers actually, that said maybe I should write this in a book form, and provide more context and stories around the advice that I was giving as well. So that's how I conceptualized this book. That's how I started thinking about writing this book. And my intended audience was early in career, mid-career professionals in technology, exactly the community that you're catering to, Kate. I think that's exactly who I wanted to reach as well. So I'm really glad that we are having this conversation, because I'm hoping that more people will pick up the book and benefit from it, because this is exactly the community of folks that I intended the book for.
I love that. And I think that so many of your lessons are going to be so resonant to so many women that we work with. And I also really appreciated how throughout your book you tie all of your learnings to interactions and stories that come from your own life. And you point to the influence of others who were helpful or who are important to you. So, one of my favorite stories or anecdotes is one that you share early on in your career. And it's about an interaction that you have with your aunt as a child. Would you mind being able to recap some of the story of the tube of red lipstick and the
Oh
lessons that
yeah,
you're
I think.
able to take away from it?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that story too, because it's such a pivot. I think everybody has some sort of pivotal moment in their life that they can go back to and, oh, this is what changed my life in some way. And for me, that the tube of red lipstick moment was that. But let me start with going way back, and let me start with my mother, right? As you probably know by now, because you read the book, I lost my mother when I was 5 years old, and she lived a very short life, right? Like, she passed away when she was 32. But, when she was alive, she lived in a time when women did not have a lot of access to education back in the little town that I come from in India. She graduated high school, but after that, she was not really expected to go on to study college. In fact, she was expected to be a homemaker, a mother, expected to really start a family. And that was sort of like her schema in life, right? Like, that's what she was, the template that she was supposed to fit. And all her sisters, the same thing. They did not, one of them actually went to college, but did not do anything after beyond college. She became a homemaker, and she did not have a career. And even before my mother's generation, my grandmother, both my grandmothers, they did not even finish high school, because after you sort of, come of age at that time, you're supposed to stop education and just, continue learning how to cook and clean and take care of a family. So we have come a long way since then. It's really inspiring to see the number of women that are in all kinds of, facets of life. And so it's really inspiring for me to see that. But back then, when I was a little girl and growing up, I did not have too many role models that actually had a career, had a job, and really wanted to achieve big things on their career front, right? Except this one aunt, Aunt Sundari, who is my father's brother's wife. And she was an inspiration. She was a role model for me. I used to spend my summer holidays with her. She lived in New Delhi, the capital of India. And, when she used to commute to work, she had a job that she used to commute to every day on a public bus. And it was a tough, tough commute, right? Because, you might know that public transport in India tends to get very crowded, right? And she would not have a place to sit, and she would have to just stand for an entire hour, and it was just jam packed, and it was a very stressful commute. And then she'd come home every single day when I was spending summer holidays with her, very, very exhausted, right? Like she would just come home and, just want to sleep. And of course, she had to go take care of the kitchen and cook something for her family. So I used to ask her, this seems to be a very tough thing to do. I mean, why do you have a job? It seems like it's exhausting to have a job. It's exhausting to come back and cook and clean and do everything for your family. Why do you have to have a job? You can just be like my other aunts and my grandma and not have a job. And she said to me, and I talk about this in the book as well, yes, it is difficult. It's not easy to have a job and do these other things that are expected of me as well. Keep in mind that back in her time when she was a young person, she did not have a lot of support from her family too in terms of taking care of the house, which is something that we should correct. That should not be the case. She should have equal partnership at home. But that's what it was. But still, she persevered and she was able to do that. And she told me that the reason I do it is because if I want to have if I want to go and buy a tube of red lipstick, I should have the independence to do that. I should not be required to stand in front of another person and explain to that person why I need a tube of red lipstick. And so please, please give me this money so I can go buy me a tube of red lipstick, right? I should have the independence. I should have the financial wherewithal to buy something quote unquote frivolous for myself, right? And so that really sort of lit a light bulb in my mind that okay, I need to have something in my life where I get that sense of independence and that sense of freedom from. And I've always kind of held that in my heart as a reason why I should stand on my own two legs, and I still cherish that lesson.
I love that. And I just think how important financial independence and the ability to take care of yourself and your needs, whether that be for pleasure or for just all the ins and outs of day-to-day life is
Yes.
for women especially. And so it was such a beautiful way to illustrate that. So something that comes across very clearly is that you are a lifelong learner and that you have really seen a career in tech as being great for your curiosity and your learning and exploration. What is something that you are currently curious about and are taking time to explore in the field?
Yeah, now it's probably no surprise. I'm trying to learn a lot about AI, right? That this is something that has just exploded on the tech scene recently. We do a lot in Microsoft as well, trying to, get AI into all our products and stuff like that. Same thing, in the industry, lots of people are doing lots of things with AI. If there is one thing that I want to make sure that your listeners also learn, I think that's an area at least to kind of get some familiarity with what's going on there. I specifically am interested in the ethics and responsibility around AI, right? Because it's very easy for us to get things wrong, just like we can get things wrong with data, biases and errors in data, right? Like AI is powered with a lot of data, and we need to make sure that the data that powers the AI and the experiences of AI, we are, not introducing biases in them. We're not introducing errors in them that can lead to a really bad situation in the future, right? We don't know 50 years from now how the world is going to be. I think that it is going to be very, very different from what we are seeing today. And we are making that world happen. And I think it's important for us to bring all our diverse experiences and perspectives on the table, but also to kind of make sure that we are doing it in a responsible and ethical manner. And that is something that I'm educating myself quite a bit on these days.
Thank you for sharing that. And I believe that your insights point to one of our shared missions too, about caring so much about who is leading in this industry and that there be equitable access to leadership because who builds products that we use really, really matters. And we want leaders to be ethical and to represent the population as a whole, and to be thinking through diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, all of these sorts of things. So I
I
see so
love
many
that.
connections there.
I love that. I do think that, I think we are building technology for the entire world, this global community, right? And that is why I feel like it is super important for us to really have the diversity in the way we build products. And because I have the background that I have, and because I have gone through all the things that I've described in my book, I think I bring a set of perspectives that are unique into the mix, right? And so that is important for us to have all these diverse experiences. We need to build technology with a diverse set of people from around the world. And that is why I'm a very strong believer in having a diverse team and in having all those experiences and different thinking styles that are going to make our world a better place for tomorrow.
So, speaking of building diverse teams and also being somebody who goes into perhaps teams that aren't functioning as well as they could be, as you've done some project turnarounds, how do you go about approaching and enabling the teams that you work with to be inclusive and also high performing?
That's a great question. I think the key is to sort of, have that at the forefront of your mind, right? I think I mentioned this in Microsoft. We have in the book as well. We have these 10 inclusive behaviors, right? Like before every single meeting, we sort of check in with those 10 inclusive behaviors. Are we making sure that we are brave? Are we inviting different perspectives to the table? So it's important to not just have it in the back of your mind. It has to be forefront, in your thinking, right? As you're approaching all these technical conversations, it's very easy to slide into a non-inclusive behavior pattern. And so it's important to do that. I think it's also important for leadership to be a very, very, we need to keep that very intentional, right? Like one of the things that I do when I interview people for new roles in my team is to make sure that we have a very diverse slate, especially for the more senior positions. We have a diverse slate. Same thing, I just told you as we started this conversation before we started recording that I had just come back from Africa. I have teams all around the globe, right? It's really a global team for building a global product. My team builds Windows. It's a global team, right? So I really believe in that. I think there is talent all around the world, and I think it's important for us to include the talent around the world in order to build a product that is going to really serve the entire global community. So leadership has to be intentional about introducing diversity into the mix. And a lot of what I talk about in the book is for diverse leaders, such as myself, or diverse professionals like your listeners. It's important to also understand that we need to bring our perspectives to the table. It's often easy for us to just sit on the sidelines, right? Like Sheryl Sandberg talks about this quite a bit in her book as well. It's easy for us to get into a meeting room and sit in a chair that is not even at the table. I think it's important to drum up the courage to share your perspectives, even if the perspective, especially if the perspective is, unpopular, right? You need to be able to drum up the courage. Obviously, the corporation, the team, and the organization have to create an environment where you can very freely bring that perspective onto the table. But a lot of times we also put those limiting, beliefs into our own head because we have just picked up so many things from society, so many messages from society, where it's easy for us to just be quiet and meek and not voice anything that is unpopular. So it's both the yin and the yang, right? The corporation has to provide an environment where it's easy for us to bring that perspective. But as individuals, we also have to build those skills. I talk about 7 specific skills in the book: courage and resilience and agility and experimentation and prioritization. So all of those skills that it's important for you to build in yourself as an individual, that'll really add to this whole let's build a diverse tech workplace for a diverse world.
Yes. And just thinking about your antidote about the importance of bringing in both the yin and the yang, you also speak in your book about the importance of every once in a while going out onto the balcony and listening and
Right.
taking time to be quiet, let things settle, observe. Can you speak a bit more about some of the balance that you have found between the listening and the speaking or communicating?
Right. I think the getting on the balcony is a skill that I use a lot, especially when I'm the senior most person in the room, right? a lot of times the person that is the senior most person in the room tends to, whatever opinion or perspective they voice, a lot of people sort of tag along with that because it's the most senior, most influential voice in the room, right? So in a room like that, I tend to want to get on the balcony, and getting on the balcony is something I picked up in a leadership training in Microsoft. And the idea is that a lot of times there's things going on in the meeting room. It's important for you to just step away from the fray, the dance floor, into the balcony to observe the lay of the land, who is dancing with who is not participating, who should be invited to participate in the dance, right? So I think that's the skill of a leader, where it's important to see what's going on. How do I really, what are the different perspectives, what is the body language being shared here, so that you can actually finally, when you do have the opinion, you have taken into consideration all the different things that are going on in the dance floor, invited the people who've really not participated in the conversation, right? So that's a skill that I try to leverage quite a bit especially when I'm a senior person in the room and there's a lot of folks that are introverted, quiet, and I want to invite them to speak. And I think it's a good leadership skill to have, regardless of if you're male, female, any gender, right? But in terms of being able to share your perspectives, I think that's the when on you're on the other side, where you're in the dance floor and you're not sharing your perspectives, you're just being quiet or shy. I think it is important to share your perspectives. When you find yourself kind of quieting down because, oh, I'm just too scared or too shy to voice this perspective, I think that's when you need to say this perspective is important to be heard, because you're bringing a very unique perspective possibly to the table that has not been voiced before. And so you need to it's a responsibility for you to share that perspective, because that's what will make your team a better team. That's what will make your product a better product for the world.
Yes, you're in the room for a reason.
Right.
Use
Exactly.
use your voice. So you just pointed to some lessons or some skills that you have developed in your leadership journey. Many of our audience members are perhaps thinking, oh, I have an opportunity to maybe become a manager of people, or should I stay on an individual contributor track, or should I become a people manager, an engineering manager? Can you speak to some of the differences or skills that you have found yourself developing in your journey into being a people manager?
Yeah. I actually did not seek to become a people manager when I was
Mhm.
given the opportunity, or when I, had the opportunity to become a people manager. I was very happy as an individual contributor. I don't get to do a lot of coding in my day job now. My job is a lot around decision making and building culture and building teams and strategies. But, I still, in the evenings and weekends, I try to find a little bit of time to do a bit of coding on personal projects, because I just love coding, right? And that's because the instant gratification that you get when you see the code that you write actually in action on the screen, and when you have debugged something, you've found what the problem is. The problem solving happens to be one of my favorite things to do. So that instant gratification, you're not going to get as a manager, right? As a manager, a lot of these projects are long lead time. Like your strategy is going to take several months, if not several years, to really be fruitful. The people that you're growing, one of the most important things that I get to do in my day job as a manager is grow people, right? Is to lift people up, is to build the right culture. A lot of these things are not going to have instant gratification for you, right? You're going to have to wait and be patient to see the outcomes of your action. And that is the biggest difference in terms of, how you have to change your mindset from being an individual contributor to being a people manager, is to develop patience. And that's been one of the things that I've been working at for a very long time. On a day-to-day basis, what I get to do as a manager, again, lots of decision making, right? Like, is this the right strategy? Is this not the right strategy? What are the things that I need to invest in? What projects, what areas of expertise I need to grow in my team? What is the right team to build here? Who are the right people? Who are the right leaders to grow within the team? How do I grow people, their careers? What motivates, what excites people? What energizes them, right? Those are all things that I care about deeply. The culture bit is super important. I want to make sure that I build a team that is, that where everybody feels like they belong and can bring their best work to the environment, right? So I think culture is an important piece of what I do every single day, right? So these are all, like I said, very intangible things and not things that you can see in action in a single day. So you need to be patient, and that's the biggest thing that you need to develop as a manager. It's been an exciting journey though, since I decided to become a man. By the way, when I was given the opportunity to become a manager, I told the person that gave me that opportunity that, hey, look, if you know, I'm an individual contributor now. I really like my job and I think I'm good at it. I don't know what this manager thing is going to be like. Maybe you'll like me, maybe I'll like it. I don't know. But if either of those things is not true, whether I'm not doing a good job or I don't like it, then I want the freedom to come back and be an individual contributor, right? So the thing that I want to make sure that everybody gets is that most decisions like this that you make in your career are not, and it's not irreversible, right? Like you are going to be able to go back to being an individual contributor if you don't like being a manager, or even vice versa, right? At least in most companies this tends to be true. So I think, you have to think about it in the right way and not attach too much sort of importance to every single decision, because then you're going to have a huge amount of decision fatigue, right? So you kind of want to do that and have that curiosity, right? And that's been sort of the red thread in my professional journey, is having curiosity. What is this people management about? Am I going to like it? What are the new skills to learn? And I did end up learning a lot of new skills: how to lead with empathy, how to build culture, how to inspire and motivate people, how to really understand, I call it debugging people. How do I understand what motivates you, Kate, versus what motivates another person, right? So, those are all interesting things for me to learn. And I think that curiosity, having that sense of curiosity, is super important in your career.
It really is. And something that you said earlier on in your response, you spoke about the skills that you are developing in others, but it also sounded like you are being very intentional in communicating how people can be most successful in speaking to you or advocating or getting a point across, or here are the thoughts that are going through my head, or this is what I am considering. And so you are in this, but with me thinking through this and you understanding what I am thinking through, we can come to a place
That's right.
of alignment better too. So it sounds like you are paving a path forward for having those on your team understand what is important to you or what will, so that you can mutually succeed.
Right.
So that's,
Absolutely. I think communication is really an art, right? And as much as, I talk about communication quite a bit in my book, how do you story tell and how do you speak up in meetings, and how do you calm your meeting? How do you communicate in writing as well, right? Those are all important skills. As professionals in technology, we kind of tend to think of our jobs as interacting with computers, right? It's just writing code and writing specs that someone else will take and write code. It's all really interaction with the machine. Really, you are working with a team of human beings. You are building technology for people, right? So there's so much involvement of people in this. And unfortunately, I don't think our schools really train us really well for how do you communicate with people, how do you collaborate with people. I think that is an important skill that I have developed over the course of these 20 years in the industry, is, not just working with computers, which I was trained in for the first 6 years of my, career in computer science. But I think a lot of the later learning has been around how do I communicate clearly? And part of communicating is that, what am I expecting? What are you expecting? Let's come to the same page on what I know we are really communicating here. That shared understanding of problem and the vision and all the details, I think, is super important.
yes, can, I am in agreement with that. I'm curious, how did mentors or trusted advisors or people in your network or even things that you learned or read help influence or help you navigate through a potential problem or challenge?
Yeah, interesting. I just had a conversation with a colleague of mine. She was asking me for, hey, do you have any advice? She's new to the company, and she was asking me about, do you have any advice to, how I can get a mentor, or a few mentors, right? For me personally, I've had, unofficial mentors and maybe a couple of official mentors, right? But I have had a lot of people that I lean on, right? Inside Microsoft, but outside Microsoft as well. A number of them male, a number of them female, right? I think it's important to learn from all. I mean, it is a matter of fact that most of the leaders and most of the very senior people in the company and in the industry these days are male, right? So it's important to learn from all genders. And as much as I do have a lot of female mentors, I do have a lot of male mentors as well. I also have sounding boards more than mentors, right? Like a lot of times, these are not people that are officially tagged as mentors, but I have a group of people around me, I don't know, my community, my tribe, right, that have some understanding of where I am, both personally and professionally, but also understand the space, right? This domain, this company, this industry, to be able to give me valuable advice. So these are people I trust. These are people I respect, their opinions, their professional opinions. And so, I often, when I'm struggling with something like I want to take on a new role, or I'm thinking of a change in teams, or change in what I'm doing, or maybe there's some potentially thorny problem in my way in my current job, I tend to call upon them and say, hey, do you have any advice as to what I'm dealing with, and what do you think I should be doing? And this is more like a sounding board than even a mentor, right? So I think that I have sounding boards, I have mentors, and then there are the sponsors who really believe in me to the point where they're actually able to put their reputation on the line to advocate for me in my professional journey.
Yes, you got to such an important point of the different roles that everybody takes, and that we all need multiple people around us to both
That's right.
be the one-off sort of sounding board, the friend, the support, or the advocate on behalf of others. So with that, just one last question. Love making playlists. So what is one go-to song that you have when you're in need of a pump up?
Oh boy, you got me stumped on this question because I am not very musical. I have to be very honest with you. I'm not
Mhm,
super musical. A lot of times, I'm kind of like, if I need a pump up, I probably just go for a run, right? I
mhm,
love being outdoors. I just go for a run. That's what gives me most energy, right?
mhm,
If the weather is dreary today, it's raining in Seattle, as no surprise there.
mhm.
I go run on the treadmill, but I don't have a specific song that really pumps me up. I'm sorry to disappoint you, Kate.
That is fine. As a child, I was always told to like do some jumping jacks or physical
Yeah.
activity if I was needing a pump up. So I feel like that your answer fits perfectly in that response. So
Awesome.
thank you so much. It has been a pleasure, and for everybody listening, watching, make sure you check out To Be Different and also rajiraji.com for more
Yes.
information. Yes.
Thank you so much. And it's a pleasure. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this show.